Wait, you need to hear the story. This one still gives me chills.
I don't do grocery stores. I have people for that. Assistants, drivers, a personal chef who texts me shopping lists I never read. I am not the kind of man who pushes a cart through fluorescent-lit aisles at 8:30 on a Tuesday night, staring at brands of pasta sauce like they hold the answers to something important. And yet, there I was. The office had swallowed 14 hours of my life. The board meeting ran until 7. My lawyer called at 8, and by the time my driver dropped me at the corner of 5th and Marchetti, all I wanted was a bottle of red wine and something I could eat standing over a sink. No staff, no small talk, just silence and food. The store was nearly empty. Soft jazz played from somewhere overhead, that particular kind of elevator music designed to make you forget you're being mildly miserable. I had the wine. I had olives. I was heading for the register when I turned into aisle 7. And that's where everything changed. She was standing in front of the feminine hygiene section, and she was counting coins. I noticed the coins first, the way her fingers moved through them, lips moving slightly as she tallied. Then I noticed her. Small, dark-haired, wearing a beige coat that had been washed so many times it had forgotten its original color. She was maybe 23, 24. She had the kind of face that belongs in old photographs, soft, unguarded, real. The kind of face that hasn't yet learned to perform for rooms full of people. She counted the coins twice. Then she looked at the shelf again, and something crossed her face. A small, quiet shame. The kind of expression people wear when they're hoping no one is watching. I was watching. She put the box back on the shelf, not dramatically, not with anger, just carefully, like she was trying not to make a sound. She picked up a cheaper option instead, then counted again, and still came up short. 40 cents, maybe 50. I don't know why it hit me the way it did. I've written checks that have 7 zeros. I've bought companies the way other men buy suits. But standing in that aisle, watching a young woman decide between her dignity and her budget over 40 cents, something in my chest did something I hadn't felt in years. It moved. "Excuse me," I said. She startled, turned around fast, the way people do when they've been caught in a private moment. Her eyes were brown, warm, a little tired, and in that first second they were full of something between embarrassment and wariness. "I'm sorry to intrude," I said, and I meant it. "You're a few cents short. Let me." She stared at me. "I'm not," she started. "I know," I said. "I know you don't need a stranger's money. I know this is awkward." I set my wine on the shelf beside me and kept my hands visible, relaxed. But I've had 40-cent moments, and I remember what they felt like. "Please." A long silence. The jazz played something melancholy overhead. Then she said, very quietly, "That's a kind thing to say." "It's a true thing," I said. "There's a difference." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, more like the shadow that comes just before a smile, the moment when a person decides whether or not it's safe to let their guard down. She looked at me for another second, then turned back to the shelf, put back the cheaper box, and picked up the one she'd wanted first. At the register, I paid the difference without comment. She thanked me twice. I told her once was enough. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. I saw her again on Thursday. Same store. I told myself it was coincidence. I've been telling myself a lot of things lately. She was in the coffee aisle this time, a basket over her arm, and she was wearing a turtleneck, despite the fact that it was 60 degrees outside and the store was warm. She had sunglasses pushed up on her head. Indoors. I am not a detective, but I am a man who has read enough, seen enough, lived enough to recognize the particular math of those two details. Something cold settled in my stomach. I almost walked away. It wasn't my business. I didn't know her name. I had 3 conference calls before noon, and a portfolio review at 2, and the very last thing I needed was to insert myself into a stranger's life because of a hunch and 40 cents. I bought her a coffee instead. The cafe counter at the front of the store, one of those small, self-serve espresso kiosks. I ordered 2, turned around, and she was standing right there, reading the back of a ground coffee bag with the focused expression of someone trying very hard not to look at anyone. "You like it dark?" I asked, holding out one of the cups. She looked up, recognized me, and this time, the smile came. Small, careful, but real. "You again?" she said. "Me again," I said. Her name was Amalia. She told me like it was a secret she'd decided at the last second to share. Amalia. The name felt like something old and warm, like bread from an oven, like a song you know before you've ever heard it. We talked for 11 minutes. I know because I checked my watch when I left, furious at the time, and then furious at myself for being furious, because those 11 minutes had been, without exaggeration, the most honest conversation I'd had in months. She was funny. Not performed funny, not the kind of wit people deploy at dinner parties to seem interesting. She was quietly, accidentally funny, the humor slipping out from between serious sentences, surprising both of us. She told me she was studying part-time and working at a dry cleaner's, and she said it without apology or embarrassment, the way people talk about facts rather than wounds. She didn't ask what I did for a living. Almost everyone asks what I do for a living within the first 4 minutes. It's the first question, the filtering question, the question that decides what kind of conversation we're going to have. Amalia never asked. She asked if I believed in the concept of a morning coffee as a kind of spiritual ritual. "Seriously," she said, like, not in a pretentious way, just, "You're not fully human yet, and the coffee is the ceremony that makes you one." I laughed. Actually laughed. I hadn't done that in longer than I want to admit. When she left, she gave me a small wave and walked out into the pale morning, her beige coat over her shoulders, her coffee cup in both hands. I stood at that counter for a full 30 seconds before I realized I was staring at a door. I went home and cancelled my morning calls. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and wrote her name 3 times before I realized what I was doing, flipped the page and got back to work. The turtleneck, the sunglasses. I didn't forget. We exchanged numbers at the 3rd meeting, another accident that felt engineered by something larger than either of us. She dropped her bag on the sidewalk outside the store, and I'd been walking by because I had started taking that route in the mornings, a fact I had not examined too closely. I helped her collect her things: a textbook, a cracked phone case, a folded grocery list written on the back of an envelope. She laughed, embarrassed. I crouched and handed her the textbook. "You live around here?" she asked. "I walk through here," I said, which was technically true. She looked at me for a moment with those warm, tired eyes, and then she said, "You keep showing up." "You keep being here," I said, and she smiled, that full smile, the real one, the one I'd been cataloguing without meaning to, and said, "Well, in case you show up again." She took a pen from her bag and wrote her number on the back of my hand. An absurdly simple gesture, an absolutely devastating one. I called her that evening. We talked for 2 hours. I learned she loved old films, the black and white ones with big dramatic scores. She could identify any bird by its call because she'd grown up near a nature reserve. She made excellent soup from scratch and terrible cake from boxes. She wanted to be a social worker someday, to actually help, she said, not just to be seen helping, and the distinction mattered enormously to her. I did not learn why she always wore long sleeves, why she sometimes went quiet mid-sentence, like a broadcast that had momentarily lost signal, why she flinched, just slightly, barely perceptibly, when her phone buzzed and she glanced at the screen. I didn't learn these things because I didn't ask. I was waiting for her to tell me. She told me on a Wednesday. We were sitting in a small park near the store. We'd started meeting for walks, something that had happened gradually and inevitably, the way rivers find their way to the sea. She was telling me about a film she'd watched the night before, and her voice was light, animated, her hands moving in the way they did when she was excited. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it, and she became a different person. Not in a dramatic way. In the quiet, awful way of someone who has been trained to make themselves smaller. Her shoulders came in, her chin dropped. The light went out of her face the way a candle goes out in a draft. Quick, complete. "I should go," she said. "Amalia." "I'm sorry, You don't have to apologize to me," I said. My voice came out very calm, very steady, because I had learned a long time ago that calm is the language frightened people can actually hear. "You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "His name is Carlos." And she told me. Not everything, not all at once, but enough. Enough that the park bench beneath me felt like it was made of something other than wood, something that conducted electricity, because I was sitting very still and simultaneously full of a voltage I didn't know what to do with. Enough that I understood the turtlenecks, the long sleeves, the way she counted coins because he controlled the account, the flinch when the phone buzzed because the buzzing was a command and the command had consequences. She spoke carefully, factually, the way people speak about things they've had to process alone for too long. No crying, not yet, just words, clean and terrible and real. When she finished, she looked at me like she was waiting for a verdict. "How long?" I asked. 2 years. I nodded, kept my hands still, kept my breathing even. "Amalia," I said, "look at me." She did. "What he does to you is not love," I said. "It has nothing to do with love. And the fact that you're still standing, that you're sitting here in this park, studying, working, making plans, making soup from scratch." I stopped, steadied myself. "That's you. That's entirely you." She looked at me for a long, unblinking moment. Then she started to cry. Not the performed, delicate kind. The real kind. The ugly, heaving, long overdue kind that comes when someone has been holding a weight for so long that the moment someone else acknowledges its existence, the muscles simply give out. I didn't touch her. I waited. And when the crying slowed, I handed her my pocket square, clean, pressed, monogrammed, entirely impractical, and she laughed through the last of her tears at the absurdity of it. "A pocket square," she said. "I'm a very formal person," I said. She laughed again, louder this time, and I thought, I would burn everything I own to hear that laugh. I'm going to tell you the parts I know, and the parts I was told. The night Amalia left Carlos, I was not there. I was 30 miles away, sitting in my apartment, staring at my phone with the particular torment of a man who is profoundly, stupidly in love and doesn't know what he's allowed to do about it. She'd called me at 9. Her voice was steady, too steady, the calm that lives just outside of fear. "I'm going to do it tonight," she said, "while he's out." "Do you want me to come?" "No," she said. "I need to do this as myself, not as someone being rescued." It was the bravest thing I'd ever heard anyone say. She called me again at 11:14. "I'm out," she said. 2 words. The whole world in 2 words. I heard her exhale, this long, ragged, years-in-the-making exhale, and I pressed the phone to my ear like I could reach through it. "Are you safe?" I asked. "I'm outside. I have a bag. I don't—" Her voice broke just once. "I don't really have anywhere to go tonight." "You have somewhere to go," I said. She stayed in my guest room. I ordered food from the restaurant 3 blocks over. We sat on my kitchen floor. She'd wanted the floor, she said. She wasn't sure why. I sat on the floor without asking questions, and we ate pasta out of the containers, and she cried twice more and laughed 4 times. And somewhere around 2 in the morning, she fell asleep against my shoulder, and I sat very, very still for a very long time. I have negotiated acquisitions worth 9 figures. I have spoken in front of auditoriums of thousands. I have made decisions that moved markets. Nothing has ever required more discipline than sitting still in that kitchen and simply being present. Because she needed presence more than she needed anything else in the world. It came slowly, and then all at once, the way all real things do. We had 3 weeks of mornings before it happened. Coffee at my kitchen table, long walks, her falling asleep on my couch, watching old films, the black and white kind, and me pretending to watch the film when I was watching her. Her asking me once why I was so careful with her. "You treat me like I'm fragile," she said. "No," I said. "I treat you like you're valuable. Those aren't the same thing." She looked at me for a long time after that. It was a Sunday, rain against the windows. She was reading on the couch, feet tucked under her, one of my books. She'd started borrowing them, which I had encouraged aggressively because it meant she kept coming back. I was pretending to work at my desk. She looked up from her book and said, very simply, "Leonardo?" I turned. "Stop pretending to work," she said. "Come sit with me." I closed the laptop. I crossed the room. I sat beside her on the couch, and she set her book down and turned to face me. And for a moment, we just looked at each other in the grey Sunday light. Close enough that I could see the small scar on her chin. Close enough that I could see her deciding something. And then she leaned forward and kissed me. Soft, brief, certain. When she pulled back, she was watching my face with those warm brown eyes, and she looked, for the first time since I'd known her, completely unafraid. "I've wanted to do that for a while," she said. "So have I said, for a slightly embarrassing amount of time. She laughed. I kissed her back. I will not tell you everything about what followed, because some things belong only to the people inside them. What I will tell you is this. Loving Amalia was nothing like anything I expected, and exactly like everything I needed. She was gentle, and she was fierce. She cried at movies and argued about politics with a precision that left me genuinely outmatched. She burned the first batch of cookies she made in my kitchen and refused to throw them out because, she said, "They're still cookies, Leonardo. They're not garbage." She said my name like it meant something. She asked me questions no one else thought to ask. Not about my portfolio, not about my net worth, but about what I was afraid of, about what I believed in, about whether I thought people fundamentally changed or just learned better habits. She made me better, not by demanding it, by being, herself, the kind of person who makes the people around her want to be worthy of them. And I, carefully, clumsily, with all the grace of a man who had spent a decade building walls and was now taking them apart brick by brick, I let myself love her. Completely, without calculation, without exit strategy. For the first time in my life, without a plan. I have a very good legal team. 3 attorneys. 2 of them came from federal prosecution. One of them, Marcus, is the kind of man who reads financial records the way other people read novels, with genuine pleasure, looking for the twist. I placed a call on a Monday morning. I gave them Carlos's full name, his employer, his address, the timeline Amalia had given me, carefully, voluntarily, with her full knowledge and consent. The photographs she had kept on her phone, the ones she'd never shown anyone because she hadn't believed anyone would care. I believed. Marcus called me back in 48 hours. "Mr. Vance," he said, and I could hear the particular tone, the quiet satisfaction of a hunter who has located the trail. "There's quite a lot here. Domestic assault, coercive control, documented across a 2-year period. Financial abuse. He'd used her information to open 2 accounts she hadn't known about. There was also a matter of his employer, a logistics company with a compliance office that would find certain information about their senior coordinator's conduct very, very interesting. We didn't rush. We were thorough. 4 months later, Carlos stood before a judge. He did not look the way he'd looked in the photographs Amalia showed me. That swaggering, sharp-edged man who'd worn his cruelty like a cologne. He looked small. He looked exactly as small as he actually was. He received 2 years. The civil judgment came 3 weeks later. Damages Amalia hadn't expected and hadn't asked for. She cried when Marcus called us with the verdict, but differently than before. Not from pain. From something that looked, finally, like relief so deep it had nowhere to go but out. I held her. She held me back, which she'd learned to do, to take, not just give, and that might have been the most meaningful moment in all of it. We got married on a Saturday in May. Not a large wedding. Amalia didn't want large. She'd spent enough of her life performing happiness for people who weren't watching. She wanted real. She wanted small. She wanted her 2 best friends and my brother and Marcus and his husband, and a restaurant with good food and a corner booth and music she'd picked herself. She wore a dress the color of winter light, no veil. She'd done her own hair, soft, dark, natural. She looked the way she always looked, like herself, unedited, completely. I wore a suit, dark grey. She'd picked that too. When she walked toward me through the small, warm room, past the faces of the few people who knew us, past the candles and the music and the smell of white flowers on the tables, she was smiling. The real smile. The one I'd been collecting since an evening in aisle 7, before I knew what I was collecting. She reached me, took my hands, looked up. "You know what I thought, the first time?" she said, too quietly for anyone else to hear. "In the store, when you paid." "What?" I said. "I thought, nobody does that." She squeezed my hands. And then I thought, but he did. I don't have a speech for moments like that. I've never been the man with the perfect words. I've always been the man with the careful actions, the long plans, the legal pads, and the midnight calls, and the floor of the kitchen at 2 in the morning. So I didn't say anything. I just brought her hands to my mouth and kissed them and kept holding on. The officiant said the words. We said ours, and somewhere in the warm May air, in the light of a room full of people who loved us, Amalia laughed, bright and free and completely her own. That is what 40 cents bought. Everything. The end.
Oh, the story hit me in way I didn't expect, because it's not really about money or revenge or even romance. It's about one simple moment when someone sees you, really sees you, not what you can give, not how useful you are, just you. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had a moment, small, unexpected, that changed everything? Tell me in a comments, I want to know. And if this story stayed with you, you know what to do. Like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.